What's up everybody, I'm Jason and welcome back to the channel and welcome back to some more tips and tricks for the EOS R5C. So in the last two videos I talked about the menu settings that allow you to adjust how the camera controls sensor sensitivity, whether it uses ISOs or gains, and then how to fine tune all of that. In this video I'm going to go super back to basics. I'm going to simply talk about how to change the ISO setting on the R5C. And there's actually 5 different ways to go about doing this. 3 of which are enabled by default, and 2 of which are options that you can configure the camera to use if you so desire. So the first way to go about setting the ISO speed on or gain for that matter, on the R5C is simply by using the top dial on the camera directly. So you don't have to do anything to set this up. It's set up like this out of the factory by default. Turn the dial that's around the number 7 or mode button, the top dial, and the ISO speed changes. However, pretty straight. Another way that you can go about doing things as set up by default is to use the function button, or as Canon calls it on the EOS R5, the multifunction button, which I will probably keep saying accidentally because I'm more used to the naming from the R5 than the R5C. In any event, pushing this button will allow you to switch between the white balance, the aperture, the ISO, and the shutter angle on the camera and make changes to them individually. And so the way this works is you simply push the function button to select what you want. Pressing it repeatedly steps through it. You can also use the top dial to change what is selected, and then you can use either the front or rear dials to change the selected setting. In this case, we're talking about the ISO, so that's what I'm changing here. When you're done, hit the set button to deselect the item and keep you from accidentally changing it by turning one of the dials. So that's the first 2. Number 3 is to use the direct touch control system. Now, if you haven't used this, this is something that's got a neat little feature that might not be readily obvious unless you have used this, in which case it should be pretty obvious what it is, which is the ability to save preset ISO settings. So the way this works is down in the lower left corner of the screen, you will see the direct touch icon. You tap that, then you tap the ISO setting. Now to change the ISO, you can either drag the ISO tape or you can use the buttons on either side, the left and right arrows. Now the cool feature is the 3 ISO settings above it that are presets. You can tap any one of those 3 and the camera will automatically switch to that setting. Or if you want to change them from the defaults to whatever ISO settings you frequently use, tap the register. Well, first set the camera to the ISO that you want to use or save, tap the register button, and then it will allow you to save to either any of those 3 presets. They don't have to be in order. You can have them be whichever way you want, lowest to highest, highest to lowest, or just whatever order works for you. The camera doesn't care. It's all for you, so make use of that if you think that would be useful for you. Now, the last 2 methods that the camera allows you to control the ISO are not configured by default out of the factory or enabled by default out of the factory. So you'll have to make these changes to your camera yourself. These are to either 1, program a button to directly select the ISO, kind of the way the function button does, but without going through all of the other settings. So it's just push the button and you are changing the ISO. Or to use the lens's control ring or on an RF lens, or the lens control ring EF to EOS R mount adapter, or to change the function of the grip dial, which is the one by the shutter release, to work like the top dial, directly changing the ISO setting. So we'll start by looking at how to do this with a button function. So for this, we're going to jump into the menus or hit the menu button. We're going to go to assignable buttons, and then we're going to choose whichever button it is that we want to change. When we find the button we want to change, hit set or tap it on the LCD if you're using the touch screen and change the function to ISO gain. Now when that's set up, hit set to save. Step out of the menus, and now on the camera, when you hit that button, you will immediately see the ISO highlight. And you can now use the front or rear dials to change what the ISO setting is, and hit the set button again to deselect to prevent you from accidentally changing it when you are not trying to. The other option is the lens control ring or the front grip dial as well. This is done through the system setup, or changed through the system setup for menu page, We're looking for the control ring setting for the lens control ring and grip control dial from the front dial. Select whichever one you want to change. I'm doing the control ring in this case, and change it again to ISO gain. Now when you turn the control ring, or the grip dial if that's what you changed, as you can see, it will directly change the ISO set on the camera. So that's pretty much it. 5 ways you can go about changing the ISO on the R5C, 3 of which are enabled by default. 3 of which, the first 3, are pretty much the easiest ways to go. I don't see a huge amount of utility in the second 2, but they're there just in case you need them. So I hope you found this useful. If you did, let me know by hitting that like button. If this kind of thing seems like it might be your kind of thing, please consider subscribing if you're not already. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.